Okay, this is the Human Resource Committee and we're calling it to order. Everybody's here. And I need approval of the agenda, please. So moved.
Okay.
Okay. First thing is, well, we don't have any public comments that I received. I don't think anybody else did. So let's talk about insurance.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just double checking to make sure that I didn't get any public comments, but
Oh,
I did not. So, the attachment provides an overview of the plan that has been advanced from the insurance committee. The insurance committee is working within a 3% increased contribution from the district. That's shown or been part of early phases of the budget. And so using that parameter, the insurance committee has been working for a big chunk of the year, as Joan and Brian both know, big chunk of the school year, excuse me, to determine what plan possibilities could be. We then surveyed our staff that were eligible for health insurance, and the plan design that most closely aligned with what they gave us for feedback is what we see on the screen. First column on the left is our current plan structure. And then what you'll see in the second or middle column is the changed or proposed change, which has an increase in co-pays and deductibles. And then again, just for reference, this prescription drug change is not one that we're proposing. It was one that was imposed upon us by Dean. And then the corresponding change to the point of service plan that equate to the changes made in the HMO. And then finally, the third option, which is a high deductible plan with an HSA attached, which is a new, brand new structure to us, not a new structure out in the insurance world, and relatively, I would say, becoming more common in the school and public employer sector. It was important to our employees to have choices. And so I do feel good that we still are going to provide them a plan structure that has some options for them, depending on their personal circumstances. And I guess leaving it at that, I can take comments or questions from the board members or anyone else.
Brian, for the regular meeting, maybe Rebecca can do this. Could you make a copy of the comparison of other districts? The second attachment that you put in here. It just was so hard to read. And
sure.
We're on the backside or
Yeah.
the second one. And I think those comparisons are really valuable to look at as we move this plan forward, because it does put us in a good position, but maybe we could have that as in our folder, Rebecca.
Yeah.
for Monday.
Do you guys want it now or? Just for Monday's fine?
I kind of weeded through it, but I'm okay today. I just think that on Monday it would be nice for the
Yeah, it looks like
full
it's-
board to
it's
be
not
able
printing
to.
easily for me here, so I'll make sure you guys have it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and to that, I guess the couple things just to mention on the chart is that in most or in many of those districts, we don't know, for those that have changes, we don't know what they'll do. We're looking at often or very typically a snapshot of where they were at.
Yeah,
Just like ours would change, it's very likely that the structures are changing for our peer districts as well. But I think it does show that while this is a change and we're not going to downplay that it's not a significant one. It is one that is not doesn't make us a non-competitive outlier in our peer districts. you know, and I guess. Speaking about the change, and I should have mentioned this earlier. As a district, we're also looking at some changes. In our other plans, our other insurances, our vision insurance, our dental insurance. That will be coming to the full board for their consideration in March. After the HR committee gets a chance to, excuse me, the insurance committee gets a chance to view and comment on some of those things. And those potential changes in conjunction with really educating our staff about what they can do if they're going the traditional route to use the medical best flex plan to maximize their pre-tax savings, you know, and how it can work in conjunction with those other types of insurance. Or if they go want to try or their circumstances are better suited to the high deductible HSA plan, things that they can do to really mitigate or minimize the financial effect on them, I think are things that we're really gonna work hard to do, is educate and inform staff so they make great decisions when it comes to open enrollment time in May.
Okay.
So you want,
Brian, can you quickly touch base on the communication with staff regarding trying to come up with these plans?
Sure. So the committee, I guess we'll start at the insurance committee. The insurance committee has representation from the teaching groups and from hourly employees. And so there's obviously communication that went into the development of what we've proposed and the feedback we sought. And then the survey itself that went out to all employees that were eligible for health insurance. We received a tremendous response rate. So we sent it. Oh, I didn't bring that folder. We sent it to over 500 staff, and we received 486 responses from staff that are eligible for health insurance that gave us their feedback about what they were aware of in our current plan and what a future plan change, knowing that a change needs to occur, what was most appealing to them. And that staff feedback, the number one option for them is what has made its way into this proposal, which is a deductible that increased to $750 or $1,500, or a copay that increased to $50. And those were, that structure was something that again staff had a chance to weigh in on what changes would appeal most to them.
Thank you.
And then in Joe, and I kind of jumping back to your question, really what we're doing here is putting this information out to the full board for their review. And we will be asking in March.
so you don't wanna.
We actually don't need a motion to advance it. It will go to the full board for their consideration, and then review. And in March, we will put forward the full insurance package for the board's vote,
With dental.
with showing dental, showing vision, to again put the whole package together.
Okay,
This is just, again, want to be highly transparent and give people a chance to ask questions at the board level if they have them, and make sure everyone knows what's coming in advance of it occurring.
Great, so we have. This doesn't go any farther right now.
No, this is just
Great,
review. Yep.
thank you.
The second item on the agenda today is a proposal for a handbook change or guidelines change that we would like to see still this year. The reason we're seeking it is that the current guideline language about evaluation of hourly employees says that we will evaluate them in their first 3 years of employment with the district, and then on a 3-year rotation after that. As we are well aware, our staff turnover rates have increased. And it has created quite a situation to the point where actually approximately 70% of our hourly staff are up for evaluation this year, which is frankly overwhelming to our administrators and supervisors who also need to evaluate our certified staff. And so what we're proposing is a language change in the handbook that would say that we will evaluate all hourly staff in their first year of employment. And then on a 3-year rotation after that, which would be consistent with how we treat our certified employees that are experienced. So we evaluate them when we first bring them into the district to obviously make sure that they're performing at the level that we need them to perform. And then we put them into a rotation after that. This would treat hourly employees in a similar fashion and would make it much more manageable for those to be done well and thoughtfully and thoroughly by our supervisors.
Seems to make sense. Brian, are the building principals and administration responsible for all of the paras and all the assistants in their building?
Yes, I would say with a little bit of an exception, in a couple areas, special education paraeducators are under Tiffany, the director of special ed supervision. The director of facilities is responsible for the head custodians. But otherwise, beyond that, yes, our building administrators take care of all the hourly folks in their building.
Wow, that's a huge chunk.
It was actually quite dramatic. Like when Amy and I were reviewing the spreadsheet for this year, we highlight those that are up for evaluation and we don't highlight the other names. It was all highlighted, and it was bringing obviously some real concern, justifiably, by our building administrators of how can we do a good job and get good feedback to folks that need it across all of our employment groups. And that's where we're coming from.
I don't see where the difference is, though. If everybody has to be evaluated in their first year.
Of employment. So the first year they would come to the district. So what we would have, this year we would have folks that we've employed for this is their second year or this is their third year, that we would be able to put out into the future. Brand new employees are, there is going to be a number of those for sure. But we could then pace and spread out the other employees.
But before it was
So-
within the first 3 years.
We did all 3 years.
It should really say each
That's
of
what,
the first 3
that's what I
years.
could see.
Okay.
But it doesn't say each. but
Okay,
it
so
did.
he wasn't being evaluated for 3 solid years. That's what you want to change.
Yeah, that we want to go once and then put them onto a schedule every third year thereafter.
I support that.
On your first
So-
3 years.
And you want a motion and do that already?
Yeah,
this
yes,
year?
please.
I make a motion. Brian, are you comfortable with this?
Good.
Okay, I make a motion that we make this handbook change effective this year.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and so then again, this will go to the board and we would, we're right in the heart of the start of evaluation season for hourly employees. And so we'll advance it to the board and hopefully be able to put it in place this year.
Great.
Superintendent hiring process. And so this is also a topic for the main board. And so in some regards, I was planning on kind of running through you what I would share with the full board, get your feedback as a committee, and then see if there's additions or areas you'd like me to focus more on. And so what I'm going to share comes from a couple areas. It comes from at the convention, the school board convention. I did have an opportunity to watch a presentation about the superintendent hiring process. And then also had an opportunity to meet and connect with three different, the WASB put the presentation on their search committee or their search firm. And then I met with and discussed with three search firms that were at the convention, had booths. And then also had a conversation with John Bales, who's the director of the School Superintendents Association, about kind of what, you know, superintendents expect and what's out in the world. And so, you know, if we look at, you know, there are some very common steps that are going to occur in a process. And that is regardless of whether you are doing it internally or you're using a search firm. And so I'll circle back to that. We'll talk steps first. Really, the first steps in the process is for your school district to create a profile of the person they want to hire. And that's going to be created from the board, giving obviously direction of what they want to see in the person that they're working with closely. It's also going to come from stakeholder feedback, you know, staff members, community members, parents or guardians, because again, community and parents and guardians are not necessarily, you know, the same. I mean, so we want to get a broad branch, a broad swath of information. We're going to typically do that. That's going to typically occur with some survey opportunities, but also some facilitated forums where folks can come in and provide that opportunity. Then after you've got a profile, then you would, and again, if we're looking to have a person hired in January, that's probably happening late summer, very early fall. So September-ish, we're getting that profile built. Then if we are, then we're posting, this would go to posting, and we're posting it in October, November range. And there's really two, and again, when we talk about postings, there's some very typical areas that these get posted, administration, associations, leadership associations, and by their very nature, postings are all national searches now, right? I mean, everyone can tap into those via the internet. And then that is what we would call passive recruiting. So you just put that out, and then folks come to it if they're interested. The other half of recruiting is probably where the most significant action occurs in a superintendent hire, which is active recruiting. And that is where someone is going out and calling and connecting directly with desired candidates. Individuals that have the experiences that we're looking for, individuals that lead districts that we feel are good matches with us, and individuals that might or might not have publicly made known that they're interested in looking at other places. And I'm going to come back to that active recruiting again in a second. The next step is screening your applicants. The screening process can typically happens in one or two ways. The board is screening all applicants, or search firms would be a part of like a pre-screening process, and then giving a reduced list to the school board for their review. And again, I'm going to touch on search firms in the other areas too, but that's one where it's something that's, if we don't have a search firm, obviously the board would be doing that screening. And then we're likely conducting interviews that are really a multiple step process. Your first bank of candidates are typically interviewed by the board alone. And that then narrows down to a slate of finalists. And that those finalists then are typically interviewed, you know, like somehow with around the district. And when I say somehow, there's typically, you're getting stakeholders involved in this part. So there's a parent, guardian / community portion of the interview. There's typically a staff portion of the interview, and often that is going to be, those areas they're going to provide feedback that the board will use to take those finalists down and make the last decision.
So Brian, back up.
Yep.
So you feel the board would make, go through interviews with a larger group, but they would narrow it down without necessarily feedback from the parent. Okay.
Yeah, that's the typical process. The board takes the community and staff and parents have given us feedback about
Early.
what type of person we want to
In the
see.
profile.
The board will take it down to finalists.
So we
And
might start with 6 and whittle
Yeah.
down to 3 and.
the importance of that step is twofold. One is for the district, right, is so that it's manageable. Because this is a very intensive process when you bring folks here to present to across the district. That's an intensive process to manage. But the second part is actually for us to probably get the best candidates. Many of these, and again, this is according to both the presentation I heard and John Bales. Many of these very strong candidates do not want their name to be released publicly until they know they're a finalist. Because we're very likely going to be attracting folks that are already a superintendent somewhere. And there's a political cost to seeking out a job somewhere else. So they're not going to put themselves out there until they know that they're not going to be a chance to really get the job. And so now if we take a step back to search firm or not search firm, again, it happens both ways. Typically, and this is a lot, really relying a lot on what John Bales is sharing. The districts that get to be our size, that have our level of resources, that have frankly, our type of draw, they're typically going to use a search firm. And they're going to use a search firm for a number of reasons. The search firms can do a lot of independent facilitation for us. They can be independent gatherers of feedback. Those stakeholder forums, they would be the ones that would direct those, take what they hear, put it into a profile. That gives the people offering the feedback a chance to not feel like they're giving it to someone that might filter it. It also gives a level of independence in that they're not going to have necessarily preconceived notions of what it should be. They're going to take that feedback for what it is, and they're going to gather it. And they're also typically going to, again, this is going to would be with a search firm, would be work, in conjunction with my office. But they're going to take the survey information and they're going to use that as well. And so, I would likely help them get it out to the people that we need to get it out to, but they're going to actually receive it. They're going to use it. They're going to create the profile. They would then actually present that profile to the school board before we would use it. So there would be, you would have feedback as a board. We'd gather additional feedback. We'd get that feedback presented back to us, to you. And then once everyone was comfortable with it, it would go out to our posting. Now, if we talk about posting and we talk about active recruiting is probably where the search firms are really going to provide the most exceptional value. They are going to have, these search consultants are typically either current or retired superintendents who have these relationships. And so they're going to actively go out and, they're going to say, hey, taps on the shoulder. We think this is a good opportunity for you. This is a good fit. They're also going to have knowledge of who is interested in other jobs, that, you know, again, might not have brought anything up publicly. You know, they're not saying, hey, I'm out to look for a different district. But they have made that aware, they've made those search firms aware that they are open to it. And that's really a benefit to you know, to do for us. And then, as I mentioned in the screening area, there is really two ways to do that. And I think that's something that as a board, we would ask search firms to explain why or how they typically do it, but you would ultimately make that decision. Do you want to get all of the candidates and have the board vet them? Or do you want the search firm to use some of that insider knowledge, if you would, to do some of the vetting for you, to give you a list that you would then use to select for that first round of interviews? When we get to the interviews, they'll provide us, they can provide assistance there, obviously with, you know, questions, connections, background reference checking. Those are all things that they would typically be involved in. And then they would also be able to facilitate, when we get to the finalist realm, they would be able to facilitate like those other interviews. So, you know, they'd be able to potentially facilitate a staff interview process. They would be able to facilitate for you a community interview process. And then gather feedback from those groups to present to the board for the discussion and selection of the final candidate. And I would say in John's estimation, really the only con, if you would, is that there's an additional expenditure to using a search firm. And probably we would obviously seek out, we would put out to these active firms. He really recommended probably a half dozen that are doing the most in this work right now in Wisconsin. The WASB has a list of 12. And so we would invite all to be involved in. The board would typically then interview the search firms first, which would probably be something that happens late spring, like an April, May timeline, so that we could get them on the books, if you would. They typically are going to involve a cost, and it depends on the firm and it depends on the proposal that we put out to them. But we're probably talking a cost of somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000. And again, that will vary. And the request for proposals that we would put out would ask for that information, would identify steps that we want as a district to take, you as a board want them to do. And we then would vet that out. And as I mentioned, typically you're going to bring those firms in and probably have them present to you what their proposal is.
When you mentioned that the firm would be, did you say would be part of the interview? Would they be in the background when we interview people, or?
I would say they're if it's the board interview, like that first board interview, that typically they might assist with it. But that is probably like many of the school type interviews that we're familiar with, you know, a set series of questions, you know, that every candidate's going to receive. And, you know, really the board could rotate who's asking them. You know, I guess you could really set that parameter up probably if you want them at the table with you. You could ask them to do so if you didn't need them or feel they might want to be there to help facilitate the discussion.
Yeah.
Because
But
that would be
the questions. They
yeah.
might help.
They would also facilitate your discussion for decision making if you wanted them to.
They could take on the role you normally take during like a teacher interview.
Yeah,
Because you usually lead it and help that facilitation.
yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Search firm is definitely worth the investment. I mean, this is the board's biggest decision. Who's going to run the district for the next number of years. It also takes any of the bias out of it from the board's perspective or the community's perspective, at least, and help narrow down and vet out the first group of candidates. And I like the idea of being able to give them an idea of the qualities and what we're looking for, and making sure we got a large, diverse candidate pool to shoulder tap for us. And I think it's a good investment. It just depends at what point the board wants to, I mean, they'll be involved throughout the process, but I think it's important that we have an outside group, at least, who are professional in this, take the lead, at least at the beginning.
I agree, Brian.
Yeah,
So this is going to be a discussion on Monday night.
Mhm.
And Brian is going to kind of give the full board the information he just stated. And follow up to that, I guess to move this forward, if we're looking to hire a firm in April or May, we need if we choose as a board to do a search firm, we need to get a RFP out soon. And we're only in,
It's February, but yeah, I mean,
February. So you'd want to put that together. What's the time frame of putting together a RFP for something like this?
actually, I have examples from other
Okay.
school districts. And so I would say that, I think it would make sense to use the HR committee to kind of help develop that RFP,
Okay.
or request for proposal. And so I think, with a matter of a meeting, HR committee meeting, I believe that we could finalize it using the structure. I mean, the structure is pretty typical, and I have several of them,
Okay.
across districts, similar size to us. And I think it really would be a matter of how long do you want to have the proposals out for response? I mean, this is well in the wheelhouse of these firms, so they're gonna be able to knock these back to us pretty quickly. I guess I don't have a good answer of how long a request for proposal typically gives for a response, but I can find that out.
Yeah, maybe have that information for Monday, because, I just want to stay ahead of the process, and make sure that we are doing things in a timely fashion to put us in a position for the best.
In terms of the information, did you feel like the way I shared it with you would be helpful to share it in that same way with the board?
I
The full
felt it
board?
was really perfect.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
I liked how you kind of gave a time frame and, kind of backing up when we have to start moving on things. No, good job.
and I think it lets everyone know the amount of work that's involved. So if we were to do this on our own, it would be a major task.
It would, I mean, and I think, obviously, you have an HR department that does this, but. The fact of the matter is, it's gonna fall back onto the board's shoulders to do a lot of these things. And. That's a question the board's gotta ask themselves, do they have that time? Do they have that expertise?
Great.
Perfect. So
Um,
moving this to Monday night.
Mhm.
Great.
Okay, our next item is the school climate data review, and I left that folder in my office. Can I have 30 seconds to run to my office and grab that?
Go.
I'm on the clock.
Yeah.
Here we go.
So was it a difficult decision? Because it's still just kind of raining.
Hey Rebecca, can you hear me?
Yes, I
Did it
can.
close?
Yeah, we closed
I,
today.
I sent you a message about the
paying
board
attention to
packet for
news right
today.
Oh, okay.
I woke up, I
Even
said,
maps.
I haven't looked.
did they?
Text or an email.
Well, I was gonna go do some lab work after this. You think it's, well, I'll see how the roads are. I just have to get.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, just send me a text or an email. I'm planning on being here, but if I get anxious, I might leave early.
Can you do it from home?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll just
Do you
text
wanna
you
do it
once I
from
have
home?
that information in there.
All right. So just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
Thanks for, well, get the heart rate going again. And so what I presented to you here is, it was the staff climate data at a district level from, an opportunity that every regular staff person was given. So when I say regular staff, full and part-time people, that would not include, people that are only coaches or advisors, that would not include substitutes, but it would include everyone else that's on the payroll. And so at the moment that we sent this, that was 611 individuals. Actually, Rebecca, could you open up the title again? I forget the totals of how many people responded again. So we had 457 individuals responded in part. And the survey was set up that it would take whatever they would respond to, we would use that. 415 individuals fully completed it. So again, when you think about getting a good cross-section of staff, a good amount of feedback, feel really, really good about this feedback. In terms of it being a good representation of our district. You know, and as the data, which, you know, as you hopefully had opportunity to show, it's a good cross-section of both our certified staff and our support staff. You know, across buildings, we had great response rates. And so it's been, I think, a really healthy glimpse into, at a high level, things that are typically important to staff. You know, you talk about relationships with your supervisor, relationships with your peer, satisfaction with your role, and you know, career-based questions like, you know, are you advancing, getting training? Do you see opportunities for you? In a high level, I think we have a lot here to feel good about. Certainly, there's areas that we want to improve in. But you know, as we went into this survey, we expected that this would give us some things that we wanted to investigate further. And there definitely are some things that we want to investigate further to better understand. You know, and some of those things that really as a district level came up for us as things we want to learn more about would be communication channels was something that, while it was positive, we've got some areas there that it appears that it could be improved or better understood. You know, individuals defining whether or not their culture at their building or a workplace is positive and healthy. It is, but it's not, again, there's room for improvement there. So understanding better what's happening there. I think the understanding from staff what their concerns are with the decision-making process. Again, staff feel good about it, but there's some relative areas for growth there. And then when we started to talk about PLC time, that particular set of questions only went to certified staff because only certified staff would be involved in that process. That was really across the board. And so I think that speaks to a few things. What we're really seeing is that there's differences from building to building. And I think it probably makes a little bit of sense if you think about buildings that have had more staff change since we've done some of our initial training, have some more across the board results. You know, folks are wondering, and so, I think it continues to be something that as a building, at our buildings, they are, we're addressing the needs, building by building. But it shows that we still have needs to continue to get folks trained, comfortable and cultured to the PLCs. And then I think one of the final areas that obviously popped to administration as we reviewed it was that, folks have made it, gave us feedback that their current workloads are, they're feeling heavy. They're feeling that weight. That's not uncommon in the educational world for people to feel that. It is challenging work. Time of year also makes a difference. We did it in the fall, right? You'd see different results if you did it at the beginning of the year. You'd see different results if you did it in the mid. You'd see different results at the end. But I think we want to continue to find out ways to support staff with their workloads.
When do you decide that it's overwhelming? I mean, we ask people, how are you doing? And when they tell us, we don't do anything about it. Or we have trouble doing. much.
Well, and that's a great question. I mean, some of the work that we do, right, it's hard, but it needs to be done. What I would say is kind of, that actually does a great segue into what are we using these results for right now? This is the information I gave you is district level. What we've also done is I've broken it out by buildings. And so I'm in the process right now of going with the buildings administration, and we're reviewing their specific data. And the neat opportunity is we can compare them to other schools that have similar levels, like within our district. Or we can compare them to the district level and say, hey, it looks a little different, good or bad. Why do you think that is? And then each building is kind of setting up what they might do next with it. But the key, Judy, to actually circle back to what you led us into is we do need to do something with it, right? We need to make sure we need to get it into the hands of staff so staff can see this, because frankly, part of it is we want them to see how positive feedback is, right? I mean, it means something when you see, hey, I work at a place where people feel good about working here, right? That help, then you're more likely to feel good about working here, right? So it's a little bit of a snowball, self-fulfilling prophecy. We want folks to know, people feel good about working here, but we also want them to know, we hear you saying there's some things that aren't great here. We need to understand that more. And next step, what can we do to improve it? And different buildings have different areas that pop more than others. And we're whether we call those guiding coalitions, whether we call those leadership teams, we're going to go to those folks and we're going to say, hey, here's our building data. Here's what we have seen pop. Help us understand, what does this mean? Help us understand what can we do, and really ask staff, right? I mean, because that's the key, is you've got to ask your staff what would help them. Now, some things, right, are not in the realm of possibility, but how do we know until we get them on the table, right? And so we're not at the point yet where every building is ready to take it to their staff. I'm still in the process of reviewing it with the buildings. But I would say in the month of February, we'll really have finished that building review. And then some of the buildings that were a little earlier in the process are probably already rolling it out to their staff.
Brian, I don't know if it's possible, but I kind of think it might be helpful to look at it by employee group.
Yeah.
Are you able to do that?
We can. We also, thank you. At the building level, we split it out by certified and support.
Good.
Now that still keeps it somewhat lumped, right? I mean, when we talk about certified group, that's administrators. that's admin support. That central office building, that's all lumped together. But when we talk about support staff, that's, our classified staff, our custodial maintenance staff, and our admin assistants, right? So we can't, we're not able to break it down further than that. But what we can do, and we are planning to do in some cases, is actually get more feedback from a particular segment. Like, there are a couple of spots where the difference between what certified people feel and support people are feeling is significant.
Yeah.
We need to now dig in a little bit more and get some more information about why is that different.
Is this a survey that you put together? Is it kind of
It was, I'd say, a combination of things. It was using other instruments, kind of, taking from other instruments, some from Qualtrics, some from other schools. Qualtrics is the platform, the surveying platform that we subscribe to. Some was just using their suggestions. Some were going to some of my HR associations offer employee feedback surveys, and so using some of those, taking some questions from those. And there was also, as an administrative group, I had a small subgroup that helped review it and make suggestions to kind of have it fit us.
Are you intending to do this yearly?
Yes.
Every other?
Yeah,
year?
no, this is, I think realistically, it needs to be yearly and probably more so like high level, big, large survey, at least once a year, maybe twice, but probably more smaller focused surveys, even more often than that. And so what we've talked a little bit about as administrative group is that there are some universal questions that apply to everybody that we want to follow up on, but really buildings have unique questions. So we're going to have probably six or seven different surveys with some common parts to them.
How long was this survey? Like, was it 20 questions?
Oh, that's a great question. It shows on there.
Yeah.
Was there
41.
41?
41? Yeah. So it was scheduled to take folks between like 5 and 8 minutes to complete.
Yeah. It did go fast. Can you talk about that very end number, that 15.6?
Yeah. Thank you. And so if we could go to the last page on it. So that is called the Net Promoter Score. And the Net Promoter Score is a heavily studied number. And actually, you've seen this. There's Net Promoter Scores for customers to a business that they work with, and there's Net Promoter Scores from an employee to an employer. So what we're talking about is an employee to employer Net Promoter. And what this is you take promoter. So this question comes from, would you recommend Waunakee School as an employer to a friend or colleague? And it's a 1 to 10 scale. If someone scores in 9 and 10 being yes, for sure, right? Great employer. Or if it's in the business world, great company, love it, right? Great product. So 9 and 10, if somebody checks 9 or 10, they are a promoter. If they check, and again, that's heavily studied. That's not my determination. That's the organizational psychologists in the world that have created that number. If someone selects 7 or 8, they're actually in the passive category. So they'll promoters, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, they're selling it to their friends. This is the best place to work. You want to be here. Opening, apply, get here. Passive folks, just what they can kind of float, right? If they're with promoters, they might tend to be more positive. They might have some areas that they feel good about. They have other areas that they don't feel as good about. They're kind of maybe ambivalent, right? Some things are good, some things are not. I got a job, I'm okay with it. That's 7 and 8s. Anyone that scores 6 or below is a detractor, and they're actually not. They're typically saying negative things about their employment experience. and or your employer or your product or whatever. And so that score of 15.46 is your net promoter score, and it's arrived at by you subtract the detractors from the promoters. And obviously, if you have more promoters than detractors, you have a positive number. If and so that range actually goes from minus 100 to positive 100. So if you had everyone as a promoter, you'd have a score of 100. If you had everyone as a detractor, you'd have a score of negative 100. And so in terms of putting this in context, a positive score is good. Anything above 10 is healthy. So you've got a healthy culture. Anything above 20 is very good. Anything above 30 is outstanding. And as you can see, I mean, we have a good, healthy, positive score. And we have some buildings in the district that have numbers over 30.
Really.
And so, you know, that's awesome, right? And so obviously what we have to recognize is that we've got to find out, for folks that are detractors or passive, what is it about their work experience that we could improve that can move them to a different spot? But again, 15 is a very healthy score.
Really interesting data.
Yeah, and so and as I mentioned we have started the process of giving it out to employees. The WTA received the copy that you've got, and we're gonna again get it out to buildings, building by building, so everybody can see it as well.
I think that's good, because if you're constantly being surveyed, and what do you do with that data? So
Yep.
getting it back and say, this is what we know and what we're going to do about it. And I also like that you're asking the employees to come up with suggestions too for improving. It isn't just, I can fix this for you.
Yeah.
What can we do?
Because they might not wanted that fixed, right? I mean, you know, here.
Might make them a detractor.
Right. And again, I think the other part, it was the point Joan had made. The employee experience is not universal. It does depend on, it is different between employee groups. And what would matter to an employee group can vary too. Right, and so we've got to find those areas out and specifically target things that can be done.
You don't know until you know.
Yep.
So are you going to share this then too on Monday?
Did I didn't put it in the full
Okay.
board agenda. I mean, it's on, I mean, I'm certainly willing to,
You know, I think if we just reference it and say the full survey is
In the HR.
HR committee, people can go back and it was in a good form. They can go back and read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we talk about the committee reports, then we'll kind of just point that out to everybody.
Yeah, it's good information.
Thank you.
The final topic on the agenda is really one that kind of connects a number of the committees in the district. You know, and so this is the kind of the area that fell into the HR, at least the DEI committee fell into the HR and budget committee realms. And so administratively, the folks that were in place when this came to us kind of did some review of it, some brainstorming. And here's kind of, shared with you what some of those thoughts were. My question of the committee today is, how would you like to review what we've got here? Do you want me to go kind of area by area? Or box by box, if you would? Or is there certain topics you'd like to bring up and have me respond to? What would be best for you?
Don't know if it's necessary to go through box by box.
Okay.
You know, we have the report. And I guess I think what's helpful is that we keep a lens on the report. And as we can move any of the recommendations to action, knowing how they've been discussed, I feel, you know, that's when it might be more appropriate to go through it box by box, but I don't know, Judy, if you. No.
Well, I'd like to look at it a little bit longer. I just didn't, you know, I didn't have a chance to get into as much as I would like to, so.
Are there areas in the HR, Brian, that you question, that you need more board support or budget support, or are there things in this list that you want to bring up to us in how you do your job and how you run your department that might help?
And I think that might be, you know, there are a couple future steps that there are things that I'm going to do, which I think could probably lead to the answer to that question. So in a few different areas, we there's mention of like, how are we actively
Right.
attracting a more diverse candidate pool? And you know, what steps are we taking to not only attract that, but retain that particular type of candidate or applicant or employee? And so what steps that I'm involved in and going to be taking this spring is there are a couple of our peer districts that are a little bit more, I would say, further along their journey in this area than we are. Middleton and Sun Prairie are two different districts that have really taken some proactive steps to do some of these things. And my next step is to actually sit down with their HR directors and talk about how did they, because I've seen some of that transformation occur in my time working alongside of them, and ask them, how did they do that?
Yeah.
And actually of the things that they're doing, what is helping them? What's actually moving the needle?
Yeah.
And so what I would say on a larger level, and we did bring this up yesterday at the budget committee meeting, it would be too soon for me to say, I need more financial support to do some of these things, but it is important to recognize that some of these things where, you know, going out to actively recruit, you know, different job fairs, different colleges, you know, connecting with different organizations. Those additional steps are things that we don't currently do now and don't budget for now. And so there could be, you know, a need for some additional financial support if we're going to be going out to actively pull these folks in and make a connection with them on in their location, you know, where they are, their association, you know, their campus, their, you know, their job fair. We're gonna need to spend to do that. And so, but I think before I would say this is what I think we need, I would really like to hear from those districts that are doing these things, what is working for them. And then, you know, not reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, do some of the same things that they're doing. And then, you know, build from there. You know, what I would say is as you're reviewing this and taking a look at it, I think some of the things, you know, some of the things that are mentioned in the report, we have taken some positive steps for. So we're not at a point where we're not making movement towards these things, or we haven't already done some things. We are, and we have, but we have to acknowledge that we can continue to get better, and you know, and continue to make connections. For example, actually Monday, Tuesday. Thanks to Randy, we're connected now to the Madison Area Economic. MADRAP. So it's Economic Development Group. Focused on how can you make our communities. Madison and the greater Madison area, surrounding communities, more attractive and available to diverse individuals. And so I have a meeting with them. They're gonna be doing some questioning of me of what are you doing and what's your community like and what are your employees like? And I'm gonna be getting a chance then to ask them questions, and they're gonna be sharing information back that they gather. And so that's an example. Last year, the Waunakee group, Waunakee's economic development group that's connected to the village, had me come in and present, what is your staff like? Where does your staff live? What are the barriers to having your staff live here? What are the barriers to attracting staff to live here? And so, we're partnering with these different groups to both share information and get information, right? Because this is a larger than school district challenge. And so we need to partner with outside groups and find that, find the way for all of us to make this a place that we can have and support diversity in its both of our students, of our staff, of our community. And so, those are partnerships we see.
But those are the things that, as a board, I like to hear to respond to some of the concerns that was brought out by those committees, because
Oh, sure.
I was not aware of that, and I think that that's just good sharing of, it isn't just an idle document sitting on the shelf. I mean,
Yes.
you've read it, you're responding, it's not gonna change overnight.
Right.
But I appreciate the connections on what you just.
Yeah, I think the idea that it was such a passionate area for the community. And they came up with all these recommendations, and I'm just impressed that throughout the whole district, everybody's looking at it seriously, putting it into the areas to focus on. And I just hope the community sees that, like you say, it's not on the shelf. And it's gonna take time.
Yeah.
All of those steps, and again, we don't see them because they're just part of the process. But I think those are the things that need to filter back through that DEI committee, that board group. Just to be sure that it's transparent to the community, our response to some of the concerns that were brought up, because they're valid. We accept our weaknesses, or not weaknesses, but our areas where we can improve, and we are moving.
Yeah, I think it would be a welcome opportunity for, the board DEI committee, if they wanted to ask some of these questions of, hey, what are we doing as an employer to share, here are some of the things, another thing is I'm looking at, when we talked about working with universities to recruit or incentivize BIPOC candidates. As a district, we're involved right now in conversations with Edgewood and Cardinal Stritch universities about potential programs to support candidates that we have in our district now that are, employed in us in some fashion to become certified as teachers. Right? How can, and we're open to those things, and we would love to share with, a larger audience. Yes, we are not where we would like to be, but we are not where we once were, and we're continuing to take steps. And so I think that would be a great way to continue to keep it in front of individuals, that we're not just sitting and not wanting to change. We are taking steps to improve.
I think what the DEI committee would probably like to see, because I believe what Mark's vision is once all of our board committees have kind of looked at their scope of work that affects them. That kind of then gets reviewed by the DEI boards committee to kind of see what are the areas to put focus to. Because you're right, I mean, you can't attack all of these items all at once, you have to choose which ones to do. But I think, I think what we've done, Rebecca, in our other documents, we've created another column off to the right. And it just does exactly just what you said, like if you're saying with the one that you just gave the example on, which Rebecca had up there. About like recruitment. And it was just another one, and it was a bullet point out that we're working with Cardinal Stritch and Edgewood College on X. That we're partnering with groups like MadRep to dive into kind of the regional economic partnerships. Just those statements, I think, gives at least a guidance as far as what's moving and and it will probably then articulate then either some reports to the board as far as those updates, or put those down as kind of the priority areas we want to go forward.
Exactly.
So I think it's a matter of if Rebecca, I think if we can add a column to that, I'm sure Brian in relatively short order can just go through and bullet point out, because I think that's what we did on the other committees. Am I accurate with that's what we did? That's kind of what we created, I believe.
More or less, yes.
Right.
Yeah, and I think we started to do that some because this summer, even
Right.
we had some.
We did like the administrative piece,
Yeah.
which is what that other column is.
Yeah.
And then I think as the committees have looked at it, or as there's been other work, we've just articulated it into a fifth column. We can work.
I really like, kind of partnering and sitting down and having conversations with some of the neighboring districts that are a little bit further along this journey. So those are really good steps, Brian. Thank you. Brian, we haven't heard from you online there. How are you?
I'm fine. I was just waiting for a chance. No, Randy's absolutely right. I sit on the so we just want an action column really about what currently are we doing, something that's concrete. So again, when we have these discussions around the community or that we can actually say, here's actually what's going on. Here's how we're addressing it, or here's what we've been doing over the years. We just haven't put it out there. But I agree with Brian to say that the recruitment and applicants of a more diverse background is probably really key for HR. And this is a great time to keep that focus and keep that lens open, so we can take a look at that as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. So does that complete our agenda for the day?
It does. I would say we would need to, as a committee, we would need to meet once prior to the March board meeting to see the full package of insurance. To have you review it and then advance it as a motion to the district, to the board level.
And maybe possibly see request for a proposal.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Put
Yep.
that on the agenda possibly.
Yep.
If that goes through Monday.
Yep.
Okay.
And so we've got the board meeting is on the 13th, second Monday. So we would have then it's probably something the week of March 6th.
I'm going to be out of the town, out of the state, so maybe you can run it without me.
Sure, or we could, we might be able to get somebody to sub in, so we have 3 people.
Yeah, would be good.
We could ask Monday night. Why don't we set it Monday night?
Sure.
If Judy's not gonna be here.
Okay.
maybe we could get
It's somebody else, yeah. I could
Sounds
do it
good.
on Friday the 3rd, but I couldn't do it the next week.
Though, and I would be,
No.
oh, sorry.
Don't we have community engagement meeting on March 6th in the evening?
Yes, we
Yes,
do.
we do.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be open, I wouldn't close the door to the 30th. The only reason I'm a little I'm hoping for maybe the next week is. Right now, our insurance consultant is gathering information about potential plan changes in dental and vision.
Mhm.
And I've gotta, after I get that, get the insurance committee back together for their review. It just,
No, I think
Say-
somebody else could jump in, a third person, that's fine. I think you need that time to do it,
Yeah,
so.
we'll find somebody Monday.
Yeah.
night
Okay,
to
that sounds
sit
good.
in with Judy. Okay, let's just do it Monday night. All right, motion to adjourn.
You running the show?
I just thought I would.
Motion to adjourn.
But go ahead,
Sorry, Judy.
that's all right. Hey, do you have a motion, John?
Yeah, I'd like to adjourn.
Okay, any second?
Second.
Okay, let's adjourn.
See you later.
Thanks,
All right.
guys. Thank
Thank
you. Thanks, Dave.
Bye.
You in line, Joe.